Hello everyone, welcome to Not Too Shabby Shop channel. This is Neha Tulshan from Crescent Creation, and today I have this fun shutter card for you that I created using Be MERMAZING and Hugs and Fishes stamp set from Not Too Shabby Shop along with the shutter card die from Lawn Fawn. So here I have die cut the pieces for the shutter card mechanism out of white cardstock, and now I'm going to use some stencils to create the inside scene. So here I have the Slimline Drifts and Hills stencil from My Favorite Things, and I'm lining it up with my card base to create the land or the sand part of the scene, using some post-it tapes to hold the stencil and the card base together. And now I'll ink up the sand using antique linen and vintage photo distress oxide inks. I'm sorry here that my camera is moving so much. I didn't realize that my camera was stuck and it was just moving every time I was ink blending. I will realize this and I will fix this a little later in the video when all my ink blending will be done. So here I just inked the land part, and now I smooshed some vintage photo distress oxide ink onto an acrylic block, added some water, and now splattering the land to give it a more sand-like look. Once done, I'll remove the stencil and this is how it looks. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create the sand part on this piece, which is the shutter card add-on piece. Keeping the base as a guide, I will go ahead and line up the stencil with this piece, tape it with some post-it tape, and then ink it up using antique linen and vintage photo distress oxide inks. Repeating the same steps as earlier, inking with both the inks, and then I'll splatter some vintage photo distress oxide ink onto it. To create the water, I decided to use the ocean wave stencils from Lawn Fawn. It comes in a pack of 3 and I'm going to use all the 3 stencils for my background today. Here I'm using Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink to ink up the ocean waves. And since this stencil is not long enough, I'm shifting it and lining it with the already inked wave and inking up the rest of the area. I'm going to repeat the same steps with the second stencil and then the third, and then go back to the first one and then second and third until I finish the whole background. I recently watched the animated movie Luca on Disney, and this card is highly inspired by that movie. So I created a similar kind of setup where all my secreters from both the stamp sets from Not Too Shabby Shop came out on the beach to have a nice fun beach day. Here I'm just finishing inking up my last wave, and now I'll just go ahead and ink up the top and the side edges to make sure that it doesn't look so stark white in those areas. Next, I'll go ahead and line up that add-on die cut with my card base. And now I'll go ahead and ink up the wave, making sure that I line up the wave stencils every time with my card base. Since I have not taped any of these pieces together, I'm being very careful not to move my stencil or the pieces while inking, but it's always advisable to tape the pieces together or you might have some accidents. I say that every time, but I don't listen to my own advices. So and next I'm just splattering my whole background using Mermaid Lagoon Distress Oxide ink and my fan brush. I'm using my heat tool to heat up this background to speed up the drying process. Now I'm just using some temporary tape to tape these two pieces together so that I can go ahead and do some more stenciling here. Look here, I did follow my advice and I taped the pieces so that I don't ruin it after all this work. So here I'm adding a layer of bubbles to the water area using the bubble background stencil from Lawn Fawn. I'm first inking the bubbles using Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink, and then come in with some white pigment ink and just ink on top of it. Had I just used white ink and not the peacock feathers at first, I wouldn't see the bubbles because my background is still white in few areas. So using a color at the bottom first just made the bubbles pop out a little more. Here I'm just inking up the background that wasn't covered by the stencil initially and just finishing up my background. The bubble background stencil comes in 2 pieces and I used only one of them for this background. I'm really loving this background with all the stencil layering. Now I'm working on assembling my shutter card mechanism. The shutter card die cuts these 2 fishtail tabs that I die cut using clear acetate. You can, if you want, use cardstock or even vellum, but I really wanted to experiment and see how the clear sheet looks and I must say that I am liking this look. So here I'm just gluing these two tabs to my card base. The die does create some embossed lines for you to know where these tabs are to be glued. And now all is left is to glue the top add-on piece, and this is where I realized that I made a huge mistake. I wanted the shutter card window towards the bottom for this card, but I inked my add-on piece the other way. So now I have to re-ink this whole piece. And of course, I'm not gonna bore you with the same steps, so I inked it off camera. Here I'm ready to glue it to my card base. I added some strong double-sided tape to the top and the bottom tabs, and now I'm removing the backing of those tapes and gluing the add-on piece in place. Before gluing the bottom, you want to make sure those fishtail tabs are set properly. On one end, one side of the fishtail tab is on top and the other one is on the top. Once I have those properly lined up, I'll go ahead and remove the backing and glue the add-on piece in place, finishing my shutter card base. Here I'm just checking if everything is working, and yes, it is. Now I can move on to working on my images. Here I have almost all the images from both the stamp sets. Stamping these on a white cardstock that's Copic friendly, and I'm inking it with a black Copic friendly ink. And now I'm going to use some Copic markers to color all these images. I'm going to go ahead and put some music for you to enjoy the coloring, and just letting you know that the Copic markers I used are listed on the bottom of the screen.
Feelings, it's like I can't walk on the ceiling. Oh yeah, got me dreaming, dreaming in colors I never dreamed in. Oh yeah, I let you in deeper than I let anyone else before. Fell in love with my broken pieces, took them all and made them yours. Didn't know what my heartbeat needed, skipping out, no I can't keep score. When I lose my breath, boy, you got me breathing. Oh, every little thing you do, every time you hold me, take me higher, higher. Every little thing you do, every time you hold me, take me higher, higher. Oh. Magic, no, I'm never letting go. Now that I have it with you. When you kiss me, it's like the stars fall out the sky onto my heart to cover up what I don't wanna show. I let you in deeper than I let anyone else before. Fell in love with my broken pieces, took them all and made them yours. Didn't know what my heartbeat needed, skipping out, no I can't keep score. When I lose my breath, boy, you got me breathing. Oh, every little thing you do, every time you hold me, take me higher, higher. Every little thing you do, every time you hold me, take me higher, higher. Oh, you take me higher, you take me higher, baby, you take me higher, you take me higher, baby, you take me higher, you take me higher, baby, you take me higher, yeah, you take me higher, baby.
I'm cutting dice, look at these eyes, they're not here to please you. There was a time you could be mine, before all that you put me through. I knew that you were trouble, but I love that you're bad. I'm living in this bubble and it makes you so mad.
So here I'm almost done coloring all my images. With the help of my scan and cut, I'll go ahead and die cut all these images. And now I'll go ahead and start assembling my card. For the outside of my card, I'm using some pattern papers from my stash, gluing it to both the gates of the card using some tape adhesive. Next, I'm working on the inside of my card. I'm first starting with gluing the mermaid to the center of my shutter card, using liquid glue to glue all my images to the inside of my card. Before I glue all the other images, I'll first go ahead and stamp the sentiment. I'm stamping the sentiment "You are mermazing" from the MERMAZING stamp set. This sentiment stamp is a little curved that matches with my circle window and is perfect to stamp on top of it. Here I'm gluing rest of the images as I see fit to the scene using my liquid glue. I really like all the images from both these stamp sets from Not Too Shabby Shop. They were included in the July box of the month subscription kit. The box is no more available, but these stamp sets are available to purchase separately. I have linked these products along with the others in the description box below. Here I'm gluing my last fish to the scene. And using my pair of scissors, I'll go ahead and trim off the excess that's hanging off the card. And now I'll work on the outside of the card. For the outside of the card, I decided to keep it simple this time. The shutter card also cuts these two tabs that are glued together to create the belly band for the card. I die cut my belly band out of white cardstock. And to decorate the belly band, I die cut two circles out of pattern papers, and now I'm gluing them both together. And I'll glue these circles to the belly band, making sure that I just glue it to the belly band and not to the card, because if I do that, I'll glue my card shut. Now I'll just go ahead and place the beautiful narwhal image using some foam tape onto that circle. Stamp the sentiment directly onto the circle. The sentiment says, "Let's celebrate." I'll glue rest of the shells just beside the sentiment to finish my card. And that's it, my sea theme shutter card is all done. I just love how it turned out, and I hope you guys do too. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Not Too Shabby Shop channel for more crafty videos. And don't forget, we have a new release and a hop coming up tomorrow. Can't wait to share that with you. So until tomorrow, have a nice day. Happy crafting!